The title of today's panel discussion is "Where has all the talent gone?" And you remember last year we heard from the industry associations a couple of times. Last time we heard from them was just before Christmas, since which time we've all neatly moved back from the world of lockdown 3 to a hybrid working environment. I'm told from the research that I've done and from speaking to the alliances and to the associations on this call that many agencies have never been busier. And it would appear that brand owners who've been actively returning to spending after many months of holding back on their cash, and they're spending big as the industry comes out of lockdown, and we're beginning to see, conversely, some of the lowest levels of full-time employment in the industry. So we've got a massive increase in spend, got lots of agencies very, very busy, but agency owners crying out for talent at the moment and saying they can't find that talent. In some cases, we believe obviously Brexit has contributed to the depletion of talent within the creative industries. As many as 30% of those people who were working in London were from overseas, and a great many of those people have actually returned home and either can't get back because of restrictions around travel or have decided not to come back. COVID, I think, has changed the way in which people view the world of work. So today's panel really will be focusing on how we can address this issue, both in the short term and in the longer term. And as we're speaking here, of course, our Lord and Governor, the Prime Minister, will be making a similar conversation about actually how do we change from being a low-earning economy to a more highly skilled economy as we move forward. Let's see what ideas he comes up with. Anyhow, I suspect the quality of the ideas here will be infinitely better. And I'm really very, very pleased to welcome the following members to the panel today. Kate Burnett, who's the General Manager of Talent at the DMA. I think most of you know the DMA, illustrious organisation that represents the direct marketing and data communications industries. She's a passionate believer about enabling younger people to gain the skills they need to be successful in the workplace. As General Manager of the DMA Talent and the DMA, she works with educational institutions, I should say, students, charities and employers to develop projects which improve the employability of young people, marketing, and creates a pipeline of talent for the industry. So something that the DMA I know have focused on for many, many years and have been a leader in this space. Nick Band is a director of the specialist marketing recruitment agency Future Work, an independent communications consultant. After a long career as founder and CEO of a major London PR firm, Nick went solo and now brings many years of experience both as an employer as well as being a freelancer in the world of work. Future Work is a specialist recruitment agency designed for the new way in which we work. It was formed between the merger of Premier Consultants and Pimento People and will relaunch as Future Work later this month. Matt Sullivan, who I'm sure many of you know, is the MD at BIMA, UK's community for digital and technology agencies and consultants. He's worked at lots of other trade bodies, communities and membership organisations, generally all those organisations with 3 or 4 letter acronyms, never say that word, and both in the digital creative community, both here and also stateside. Most recently, he was in New York with the Drum, but fled home during the UK lockdown and is now, as I say, at BIMA as their MD. Kemp, somebody who many of you I'm sure will also know, he's the co-founder of the Alliance of Independent Agencies, to which Pimento is both a member and I sit on their board. Graham began his career agency side, first of all client side, then agency side. He joined McCann Erickson to work on the Tesco's account, and in 1986 he co-founded the Marketing Store and helped it to grow to be one of Europe's largest independent agencies. He then later sold that to US-based company Avi, and he was recruited to head up the expansion of the Marketing Store globally, based out of their Chicago office for brands like McDonald's, Shell, and Nissan, and he helped establish 12 offices worldwide. Amongst other things, Graham is passionate about talent development, and he heads up the talent side of the Alliance and is overall responsible for training and development. So we've certainly got the right people in the panel. I know they've all got strong views. What we thought we'd do is we'll give them each a couple of minutes to kind of give their point of view on the subject and then open it up to all of you to fire questions at them as I say, I want to make this as interactive as possible. It's a hot topic, and it's not going away anytime soon. So I'm going to bring in Kate, if I may, to take the spotlight and to give us her point of view.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Stephen. So you've introduced DMA and DMA Time beautifully. The DMA has got about 1,000 corporate members across the UK, and about half of these are clients, and the other half are split really between agencies and marketing services providers. And I think the feedback and the mood reflects really what you've said there, Stephen, and that is that I guess the bounce back is happening a little bit quicker than people expected, and this is happening across all areas. So there's a good degree of positivity coming through with our conversations with our members. Spend seems to be happening across all channels, including cinema, with the launch of the new Bond film. And there's some cautious interest, I think, in attending both face-to-face events and training. So that's good from our point of view. Sponsorship from a sort of B2B and MarTech organisations is doing well. And a good barometer for us is our awards entries. The awards entries have been strong this year for the DMA Awards. But that said, there is feedback coming through about both skills and recruitment shortages across all areas. This may change a little bit now furloughs are ended, probably a bit too quick to see, but I guess we're unpicking the impact of both salary freezes and pay freezes that have come about over the last couple of years. Although I have to say, I don't think this is an altogether new issue. I think organisations have been chasing a pool of experienced talents over recent years, and I guess my point of view, the DMA's point of view, is very much that we need to invest in young people coming into the industry. And I think one of our absolute priorities over the coming years, if we want the industry to grow, is that we hire and that we train our 18 to 25s to help build that industry pipeline. And alongside that, I think it's a really good opportunity to look at transforming our cultures to make sure that we're retaining people from all backgrounds, so diversity and inclusion becomes a reality in our workplace. So I think they're my main points to kick off with, Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'm going to put in the spotlight, if I may now.
Hello, good morning. I'm Kemp from the Alliance. I've also, as Stephen said in the intro, run an agency, so I know how it feels to face challenges running an agency. As Kate said, the reality is, something in a recent survey, something like 88% of our members said they anticipate growth in the next quarter, but we are hearing all round of talent shortages. So quick top line, where do we come in on that? It's essentially, I think there are three areas that I would recommend you look at. Clearly, when there's a staff shortage, talent shortage, the primary concern is to retain as many people as you can. And so I think looking at your retention strategy is really very important. And I think if you are losing people, you need to understand why. You need to engage your people in conversation. You need to understand how they're feeling, what's going on in their world, and what's motivating them. And I think so, if I'm looking at this, I think as well as a challenge, there's an opportunity. And the opportunity is it could be a good time to look at your culture, to look at your people policies, to look at your employer brand, and also maybe even to re-examine your purpose, because purpose seems to be a major theme running through the desire to work within an organisation, within an agency. So if you can align your purpose with those of your employees, you're more likely to retain them, and retention clearly is very important. Again, and I think Kate mentioned this as well, this is an opportunity as well to build diversity into your agencies. If you've been fishing in the same pond for talent for many, many years, this is the challenge can be faced with looking beyond that. And certainly we as an organisation are working with, you know, the Brixton Finishing School, the School for Communication Arts, Born Equal, Career Ready, all of these organisations to help us find and bring on diverse talent. And I think that's probably is a more of a long-term solution than a short-term solution, but nonetheless, it's work that we should be doing now to fish in different ponds and actually build diversity. And as Kate said again, you know, looking for younger people to come into the organisation. I was at a conference yesterday. I noticed Tina's here today, and she was one of the speakers. But one of the other speakers mentioned, and he was just 25, running a recruitment business via TikTok, that his creative director was 20. So I think there is some very capable young talent that we should also be looking to bring into the industry. And my third point, maybe a bit more controversial, but if you've got a talent shortage, then you should be deploying it in the most effective way possible. And what I would suggest that means is already we're finding that talent is under great pressure, but I would say you have to look very carefully at who you pitch for or whether you accept pitches. I think you should be saying no to a lot more pitch opportunities. And I think even more controversially, you should be looking at your client base and deciding whether those clients are adding value or even profit to the organization. And if they're not, it might be time to say goodbye. And I think there'll be none happier than your busy people that go, oh, good. They weren't very good clients anyway. So my recommendation would be to use and deploy the resource you've got. And maybe just ease off on the top line growth and think about bottom line growth as a priority. So they would be my key points.
Some great points there, Graham. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll come back to some of the points in a moment. I'm now going to bring Matt in, if I may.
Hi, thanks, Stephen. Morning, everyone. I think to Stephen's point, I've kind of been around a bit. I've worked with two of the companies on this panel as well. My journey through, and it's acronyms, Stephen. Acronyms, yeah. I can never say specific either. There's always a word, isn't there, that you can't grab.
Innovation is the other one.
Yeah. So my shift to BIMA has been quite stark in the fact that I've changed from speaking to mostly creative agencies to what I call digital agencies, not as in use of digital media, as in they have dev teams, they're building products, services, websites and apps. And it's been very different. I think Tina's on the call as well. Procurement hasn't been mentioned hardly since I joined in April. You know, it doesn't seem to be a massive pressure on fees. Business is good. Digital's thriving. It's got a mass market. But there's this gulf in a skills gap. And we've just set out our purpose as an organization going forward. And our number one pillar is to what we call plug that skills gap. And it's how do you do that, right? I think a lot of the people on this call are probably going to be looking for some short-term solutions because it is a problem now, today, how you can fill those roles. But that's the problem. I think that's where I'll probably try and focus today, because you must think like, no shit, right? We never look at it long term. So the constant sort of dogfight and trying to find people means that we'll never get out of this problem. And it's really difficult for an agency to do that because it's a short-term problem. You've got clients, you need to find people. But I think it's our jobs as organizations and as trade bodies to make sure we do look long-term. And that's what we're trying to do at BIMA. So I've been at a school earlier on today that maybe I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, where we're trying to talk to kids and inspire them as to the breadth of roles that are available to them in digital. So it's today's problem, but we need to look at it at a long-term pipeline perspective, I think. Is that okay?
Thank you very much there. Matt, we'll come back to both those points. Nick, good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm having a few internet problems, so do forgive me if I crack up. I'm going to start my introduction by telling you a story. For my sins, I've been a lifelong Arsenal fan, and anyone who follows football and Arsenal in particular know that's a journey of highs and lows, and it's more downs than ups at the moment. And there came a point earlier in the season I said, I've had enough of this. I can't take it anymore. So I actually stopped watching Arsenal. I said, "What? I don't need this anymore." And that period away from it gave me a chance to look at other things in life, look at other football teams. So what's that got to do with talent shortage? Well, I think a lot of people who work actually going through that same emotional. They've been very loyal to their employer. They've had this forced break pushed upon us via COVID. And during that period, they've been thinking a lot. They've been thinking about, do they enjoy their job? They've been thinking about the work-life balance, and they've been reflecting on all these important issues of purpose and happiness and health. And that's unsettled them the same way watching Arsenal settled me. And now, according to the latest figures, up to 40 to, in some cases, 60% of people are thinking of quitting their jobs. And the Americans, as you know, have a name for all these things. They call it the Great Resignation. Now, whose fault is the Great Resignation? A bit like, it's not the Arsenal fans' fault that Arsenal's doing so badly, it's the management. And I would proffer, and I will proffer, that the reason why so many people are unhappy, unsettled, is because they have been neglected at work. There are 10 major reasons or manifestations of neglect. Pay is an important one, which Boris will be addressing. Lack of appreciation. How many times does anyone say to you, well done, Nick, you've done a great job? The feeling of being burnt out because you're working too hard. The desire to work remotely, which isn't being met by your employer. Mental health issues, your relationship with the management, also the culture. And I think someone spoke earlier about culture. This is really important. According to one survey, almost 21 in 5 people claim to have a toxic culture at work. Now that isn't a good thing. And there are lots of other reasons which we need to address as employers in order to improve the loyalty and the welfare of people at work. And without doing that, I think there's going to be more of this talent drain on all our businesses. So that's really what I want to talk about. It's more looking at the reasons why there's so much movement in the jobs market at the moment, rather than necessarily the solutions, which I think lay firmly in the laps of the employer. Thank you.
Okay, but so lots of really interesting debating points there. I mean, I want to add one further one, which is a little bit of a summary of what Nick was just saying. And that is that my belief is that actually it's just not fun anymore. But actually communications, marketing, advertising, design, branding, yada, 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 all the businesses that we actually got ourselves into, some of us many years ago, like myself and Graham and Nick and others, we joined those businesses because they were great fun. They were highly talented people. You learned from each other. You worked in environments that were largely positive. It was fairly unruly in many situations. Process was also questionable in some agencies. But the reality was we got well paid, even though the hours were really, really long. And we had an opportunity to actually learn from each other, but more importantly, also build relationships that have sustained for many, many years. And I think that is the heart of the problem, because what we have witnessed in the last 10 years in particular has been a devaluation of the people in the business. And Tina, can talk to this point. We've driven out margin in lots of businesses, which has made it difficult for agencies to retain and attract talent. In turn, it's put pressure on those people who've been remaining in those organizations to work that little bit harder. The technology that we were promised that was going to make our life easier just hasn't. It's actually, if anything, it's actually added to the burden of actually work. And we're now left with a resurgence in an industry where we're under-resourced and people are now working in a remote hybrid fashion. So they're not getting that interactivity. They're not getting that praise that Nick was talking about from their bosses. They're not getting the opportunity to socialize with their colleagues. And frankly spoken, the business was all about having a bloody good time. Okay, we did great work, 6-second TV commercials and so on. But these days, it's much more about process, much more about digital and data. And whilst there is creativity within that, it's more limited. And therefore, I wonder whether or not the issue is more to do with the nature of the job rather than necessarily the number of the people in the business.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Stephen. I remember when I started my work, my software of choice was PowerPoint. When I ended my career in agency, it was Excel, which just goes to show how things changed during that period.
I mean, ironically enough, I always think we've actually got to do a job of marketing. We've got to somehow actually make the industry more attractive for young people to come into. We've got to basically give them some confidence that actually there are careers, remember what those used to be, rather than necessarily jobs, and that people can actually grow and be more highly skilled, and will invest in that talent and will help them basically earn more money along the way. I just don't see that. I just see lots of young people moving from agency to agency because they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're equally trying to raise their salary, and the only way they can do that is to do 12 months here, 12 months there. I'll put that out to you. What do you all think?
I see fun, because I think it boils down to finances. If I didn't see so much fun when there was a smaller creative agency that's just being hammered on fees, and there's a lot of pressure. But if you walk around some of the big technology companies now, they're fun. I think people are enjoying it. It's got all the cliched bean bags and ping pong tables and bars, and they're charging good money for what they do. Clients understand the value of it. They don't have to argue about it. I think it's very different. Maybe it's not the boozy lunches and the days of Mad Men, but I don't think kids coming out of university want that. I think they're more interested in the planet and yoga and eating quinoa than they are getting hammered in Soho at lunchtime. So it's a different type of fun, maybe. But I think it boils down to the finances. If that agency's struggling and the finances aren't in good shape, it ripples through the business, doesn't it? But
it does. I agree on that point, but you've seen a shift there, haven't you? Because the people who've actually got the budget and have got the margin to invest in that are the Googles, the Facebooks, the TikToks, which is where a lot of the talent is going. It's going client side into media organizations, as I did to Walt Disney, rather than actually going into agency land, because there's not enough, ping pong bats.
I was in a thing this morning with EPAM. I mean, 20 years ago, it would have been the WPPs and the Ogilvies of the world that had thousands of employees. It's now companies like EPAM that have got, I think, 50,000 globally, huge technology companies. But the person I was with today, she was a lot of fun, and they seem to be doing it extraordinarily well. It's just a different world, isn't it?
But I think some of the fun stuff, I think, does appeal to young people when they start work. It's a nice transition into work, perhaps the free breakfast, the sort of random things that happen in the office, the drinks after work. Those things, I guess, were important, but maybe also the last 18 months has made people actually now need to look beyond that. And then some of the fundamentals aren't there, like the career mentoring and what the next steps look like. And the pay, they're looking over at the client side, and the pay is better. So I think some of it is superficial. I think you're right, but some of the fundamentals aren't there, I think, for people to stick around. So you're right, they keep on moving, and then eventually they look over the fence to the client side.
I agree. I think I don't think we can build a talented industry just on the promise of fun, because I think people can have fun in lots and lots of different environments. And I think the dilemma is that we're really not devoting enough time to career development and turning it into a proper career. We found what happens when agencies are under pressure for margin or under pressure for time, and we know they all are, that things like training and development take a back step because agencies go, I can't afford to send that person out on a day's training, and I haven't got the revenue to provide the funds either. So I think that a lot of development of young talent has taken a back step. And I don't think fun is a good enough substitute, not for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, I suppose fun, I was using that rather, more of a kind of a broader concept than just, as you say, getting hammered in Soho. What I wouldn't mind is bringing Tina into this conversation, because agencies, in order for them to be able to invest in their talent and in order for them to provide working environments that are conducive to producing great work, need to have decent margins. How, from a procurement point of view, how do we actually get agencies profitable enough to invest in talent again?
Good question. Thank you for involving me, Stephen. For me, I think it's a really hard question, because I think people, we buy people buy people. And for that, you need to invest in the talent. So I've got mixed views. I totally agree with Graham about the lack of training. I think agencies compared to clients are very unstructured in how they look after their staff. I remember when I all those years ago, went to work for Gray under Gary Lade, and I got a massive salary, but I had nothing else. There was no appraisal system, there's no support system or anything. So I think, are the margins there? I think the margins, like Matt said, are probably better than they were. I think, you know, where procurement are involved, I think procurement aren't being mentioned much because they've got better, and that's more acceptance of their role, and they understand they've got to pay for talent. I think agency senior management don't invest in things like training, career progression. But the one thing I've always had an issue about is disparity of salaries at agencies. So you've got the young people that are starting out. You know, I was with MSQ last week, and they've got loads of people starting doing data and digital jobs and leaving after 3 weeks. And I think the salaries for the young people are quite low. And then you look at how much an executive creative director is paid in a top agencies. You've got 25 grand versus what, 500,000? And I'm sorry, but you know, clients are not paid that sort of money at all. Absolutely not at all. And I disagree slightly with Kate about going to the client side because the salaries may be slightly junior, but for me, I've always had an issue with the disparity of salaries. And I think that agencies need to have more responsibility to make sure that they're investing across the board in their talent. I'm also concerned about what I hear from agencies about a lot of young kids starting and leaving. A media agency guy was telling me last week, he was trying to recruit people on 50 grand and they all want 70 grand. And he said, the trouble is they're not doing a 70 grand job. So what happens in 2 years' time when the job market levels out and that person's still operating at a 50 grand level? What do you do with them? So I do wonder, I think it was Jeremy's point in the chat thing is, you know, down to the individual choice of the individual, and actually maybe not working to hitch themselves 5 days a week to working for an agency. So I've got a mixed view, I think. I don't think it is a lot of pressure from clients. I think that's a lot better. I personally think it's the way that agencies are managing their cost base and investing in the right talent, and stop paying your senior people £500,000 and actually maybe invest, you know, like WPP are doing, or what Graham's doing with the Alliance, you know, supporting these training programs like the Brixton Finishing School and supporting people like Creative Equals. Does that answer the question? Long answer.
No, it does for me. I think you also, again, were raising more points here, and that is that it is the difference now between the kind of, you know, it's like the North-South divide or in industry in general. Are we looking at a situation where, as an industry, we have in the past abused talent, burnt them out, and frankly earned an awful lot of money from basically that particular strategy as an industry? And certainly, if you look at the way in which some of the multinationals have orientated themselves, and you look at the average age in some of the groups now, it's much younger. You're absolutely right. Senior people are earning disproportionately high salaries, and conversely, the younger members, the under 30s, are actually earning a lot less than proportionally all those years ago. So something has to give, because you can't have a situation where that much of kind of abuse is going on in the workplace. And I think it is abuse. I don't think all employers are like this, but I do think a significant number of agencies, particularly the groups, could be accused of actually this being their business strategy. And that is not sustainable in the growth market. It's not sustainable too when you have millennials, Zen Jeds, Zen Js, who just don't want to work like that. And on that basis, actually, I wouldn't mind bringing Jeremy in, because he was making, as you say, a very good point. Jeremy, you there?
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, can't see you, but that's probably...
Oh, can you see me? Hang on. I'm here. Yeah, I just to make that and pick up on Nick's point from earlier, really. I think the talent is there, but people have learned to work in a very different way through COVID, clearly, and they realise that they no longer need an agency as much as they thought they did. Like Nick's Arsenal point. I think it depends how old you are. If you're young, you need to feed off the culture that an agency can provide. You need to look and learn from others far more. If you're not in that early stage, you've established your own abilities, then you feel more confident to do your own thing, be more self-determining as opposed to play the tune of the agency. So I think the talent is there. There's lots of thriving talent. It's choosing to work in a more project-based way as opposed to hitching themselves to an agency on a salary rate. You know, it depends on circumstance. So is there a talent drain? I think I come across loads and loads of very talented people who are choosing not to work 9 to 5 at a business because they want to play the field more. They want the freedom. They're at a later stage in their careers though. The younger people can't do that because they're not strong enough. They still need stabilizers. They need to feed off others. But if you're perhaps 5 years plus in, you don't need the agency as much as they need you. I think that's what people have come to realize in the last few years. So people are choosing to be more independent, which transpires as a drain maybe when we as agencies are looking to hire that talent in. That's what I think.
And that, that does lend itself to a change in the employment strategy where you employ freelancers, if that's where the talent is going, as opposed to salaried people. And I think there's a trend towards that as well. Having an agency, well, very much like Stevens, it's a virtual agency where that commitment, that drain caused by salaries is not there. It's can be turned on and off like a tap.
I suppose the thing that we've all learned from COVID is that actually the talent doesn't have to necessarily be based in the UK. We are a service industry. You know, creativity can come from anywhere, particularly in BIMA's space. When you think about a lot of the best coders and designers and developers, they need not be in the UK. And I think agencies increasingly are trying to find lower cost economies where they can actually work with talent outside of the UK, be able to actually eke out better margins. Are you seeing that in BIMA? Are you seeing that within your agencies?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if this is across the board and where the skills gap is for us. It's around, let's use a broad brush, it's the dev roles. It isn't the client-facing roles or the strategy roles where I think there's a big problem. It's the dev roles, and they've just looked abroad. I was with somebody last week and there are 5 people in the UK. Everybody else, all the dev teams are in Asia, not just because they can't find the people. And I think the other point, it's flexible working. You've got agencies like Crowd that, it isn't built around just having hundreds of full-time employees in dev roles. It's about having a community of people that you can pull on as and when you need to. I think also with the dev roles, they've benefited a little bit more. It's a big cliche. I know I'm using a really broad brush from what's happened because they're quite happy, I think, working from home, in a quite a siloed way. They crack on, they get on with it. It's a very different role to the creative department where you really needed to be in a room. And so, they're moving out of the flat they had in London to the suburbs. They've got a big house and it kind of suits them, flexible working, a few days for them, 3 days for them. They're earning really good money at the moment. The wheels will come off with regards to that, because I think at the moment clients are paying for it because of what we've been through. They see the value in transformation and, e-commerce, but we can't just keep paying it more and charging it onto the clients. There will be a tipping point that we'll come up against soon. But to answer your point, Stephen, yeah, it's I think a lot of people are just going overseas at the moment. Flexible working, dev roles, and keep the client-facing people in the UK. Yes,
on that point, it's interesting if you read the government's skill shortage list, i.e. those jobs that we need, and you can shortcut your visa application. Web development is up there with engineers and healthcare workers.
Lorry drivers, yeah. Okay, so I wonder whether it's a question of, do we need a new deal now? Do we need a new way of working to accommodate the future requirements of these age groups and people with these very focused on, obviously, on things beyond the financial side? Do we need to find a way in which they can all both share in the benefits and the upside and make it much more of a community rather than the traditional agency model that's kind of shaped like that? And everyone at the top is earning an absolute fortune. Everyone at the bottom feels they're being sort of downtrodden. Is that, do you think, a future structure? Is there a way in which we can have a flatter structure where more people actually have their head in the trough?
I think what I'm hearing is that purpose before profit is becoming a very attractive proposition to people joining agencies. They want to know that it has a purpose in life. It's doing good things. It's helping the planet. It's not driving excessive consumption and things like that. So I think the whole basis of career development and contribution to an enterprise is changing, and it's not all about financial reward. Clearly people will look over their shoulders and see what they could earn in other industries or in other areas, but essentially what I'm hearing is that if the purpose is right, if your values match, if you can have a good work-life balance, and if you can be allowed to do other things beside the sort of full-time job, and that you work in a diverse community, then all of those things actually add to your enjoyment and satisfaction from work. And I think they're all becoming really vitally important to the younger generation, where they may not have been in the past. And I don't think young people would tolerate a business that excessively pays the owners, especially if they've got a purpose behind it. They expect everyone to be on the same page and having the same values. And if they don't align with those values, they'll go. And if there's a talent shortage, they'll find places where they do find their values work, their purpose works, and they feel well rewarded and well recognized for their contribution. I think agencies developing a purpose and a set of values is critically important. And it's critically important for clients as well to know what that business stands for and what they deliver and who they deliver it for. I think all of those things are becoming true. The sort of vague generalists where, people are earning excessive money doesn't work. I can quite see in the network agencies why creative directors earn a fortune, because they can be the difference between winning and losing multi-million-pound businesses, just like footballers, when we've had the football analogy, can be the difference between winning the league and not winning the league. So I can understand why they command big salaries, but that's not a value-based, purpose-based business.
That's great. You make some very important points there. Kate, do you see that increasingly amongst your members, that they're much more focused on the purpose than the profits?
I think undoubtedly sustainability and obviously ethics, and very much the sort of DMA's purposes around putting the customer at the heart of everything that you do is increasingly important. And I actually feel quite optimistic about that. And it's interesting with some of the points Graham's just made there, and a lot of the programs we run with students, they are asking those questions, about what a business stands for and what is it going to achieve, by being in those roles, and what is the work-life balance. These are questions that come up in our panels with students a lot. These are the things that they're concerned about. And I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to have, I think we should talk a bit about, how we engage young talent into the industry, but when we do, how are we going to strike that balance between the new sort of wants of more senior people to have that flexibility and not be in the office? How are we going to bring those two worlds together to support young people into the industry? I mean, I've worked, the DMA took someone on through the Kickstart program, which incidentally has now been extended till March next year. And we weren't in the office at that point, and I worked with Nazir remotely. He coped perfectly well with that, but it's only a 6-month placement with Kickstart, and I know he's missed out by not sort of being in the office and rubbing shoulders with people in the extent he would have done before. So somehow we're going to have to, find that sort of happy balance of people wanting to come into the office, so we can start to build those, the careers of people who are coming into the industry.
I think, to pick up on that point, I think lots of younger people do want to come in the office, not least of which because the working environments aren't conducive at home always to doing great work. Secondly, they want to learn from their peers. The issue at the moment, as I understand it, is that a lot of agencies are working on maybe 2 days a week in the office, giving full flexibility as to which days they come in. Some agencies are saying that we want everybody in on a particular day. So they're not getting necessarily the same sort of social environments and the opportunity to learn from each other and to discuss stuff. What we have learned from hybrid working, remote working, is that managers are often too remote. They're not able to fully understand what their teams are going through and how they're feeling and what pressures they're under.
I mean, it can work. You can make it work by putting those calls in. Throughout the pandemic, my team met just briefly every morning on Zoom, just to make sure everyone was okay and they knew what they were doing. You can make it work, but I just don't think they're learning their craft and they're picking up all those little extra bits and pieces, and somehow I don't think we can leave that to chance. I think we're all feeling our own way back into the workplace and when people come in and how they come in. But I think it needs looking at with some sort of structure and purpose that enables those people to start learning the ropes, learning to grow.
I totally agree with that. And I think that a lot of good agencies and a lot of good leaders were very, very good at the start of the pandemic. But I think, like all things, as people have got busier, I'm sensing that actually a lot of that good practice is beginning to go out the window, and people are reverting to type, and they're just plainly busy, and then they're not necessarily making the efforts that they were. Adam, I've lost you somewhere on the screen here. I don't know whether you can hear me or whether you're there still. Adam Rubins, I lost you altogether. Possibly have. Okay, if you got, unless you're there. Can anyone see Adam? No, don't worry. We'll carry on. Back to, if I may, back to BIMA. What can associations do both independently and collectively? Is there an opportunity, for example, to get larger associations to collaborate and work together over things like apprenticeship schemes and training more broadly?
Yeah, well, we have to, don't we? We'll be having this conversation in a year's time, 5 years time, 10 years time, because it's just not a short-term problem. And you can't expect the agencies to battle it long-term, because, it is a short-term problem. They've got to fix it then and now. We have to, Stephen. I think collectively would be great. But if not, we are a collective as such anyway. So to highlight the long-term problem. So I've been in a school this morning in Hertfordshire, secondary school, with year 9. I think they're 12 years old. They just have no idea about the breadth of roles that are available to them. We workshopped with them today, and we're not even doing anything that's digitally focused today. We're doing kind of persona work and strategy and insights. They loved it. They just have no idea. But if you go deeper though, I think the biggest problem that we've got at the moment isn't just talking to kids and people in universities. The parents still have a massive sway in the career choice that people have. And I know if those kids go back tonight and talk about what they did and say they're interested in working in AI or immersive technology, what response do you think they're going to get from their parents? Because they're still being told that medicine, law, and all those traditional roles, that's where you need to go and get a great career. So it's not just the young talent we need to talk to. They're being so heavily influenced by their parents. The research shows us that we need to battle that too. But yeah, we need to communicate to them. The awareness of what they can do in our agencies is just so low. And they already know what an engineer looks like or a career in accountancy looks like. If they don't want to be that, they want to be a footballer, it's all the obvious choices still.
It seems to me that we need to unite around this, and there needs to be an industry-wide program promoting and actually trying to get people from more diverse backgrounds into the industry. I think the work that's done by the School of Communication Arts and Brixton Finishing Academy is fantastic. But we ran a session right at the start of the year on that, and we actually got the head of the School of Communication Arts and the wonderful team on a call. And we gave agencies the opportunity to basically get involved at a very low cost in a program that would actually help bring younger people into the industry, give them vital experience. And at the same time, the agencies would be rewarded by actually getting 25 teams working on briefs for them. I got 0 response from the network, absolutely 0 response. And it's needs must. And I think that now where we are, I really do hope that the industry begins to embrace a much broader source of talent, and equally too, looks beyond the traditional Oxbridge and various other ways in which they've procured talent in the past. Because if that doesn't change, then we won't evolve as an industry, and we will lose our #1 status in the world of being in the leaders in the creative industries. So now is the time, has to be now, because we are crying out for new, fresh talent. And frankly too, we know more diversity improves profitability. And at the end of the day, our clients are selling to very diverse communities. We're not representing them. We're not doing our jobs. So,
It's interesting what Matt was saying about schools, because I was at a parents' careers evening last night actually, and I was saying my son is interested in marketing, and I said, what A-level should he be doing? And they said economics, and my son said, did you do economics? Do you need economics to set up this? I said, no, you don't. you need to be able to add up, work a spreadsheet and a lot of common sense. But I don't think schools are geared up for the marketing pathway, other than through economics and psychology. They mentioned marketing and psychology, and that was it. They were the big, they wanted the kids to be scientists, doctors, and lawyers.
This is a classic marketing problem, isn't it? You've got,
It is.
It's brilliant. Sorry.
No, I think you're right. This has been, I mean, it was raised by Marketing Week in one of their surveys a few years ago, and I'm not sure it's hugely improved. But I think marketing isn't really touched upon in any areas of the syllabus. It may be a little bit in graphics, it may be a little bit in business. And there's lots of work going on by organisations like the Careers and Enterprise Company that are putting enterprise advisors into schools to start having some of these conversations, not specifically around marketing, but just about the workplace. And the new career strategy that was launched a couple of years ago is starting to make this happen. But it is down to us, really, because a careers officer in a school has responsibility for covering every single type of career possible. So we do have to engage in that. But I think there are so many ways now to engage young talent. And I agree. I think the work that Brixton Finishing School and others are doing is fantastic. But I think we also have to look at some of the broader scalable schemes that are out there that the government are working through. I mean, I noticed somebody else in the chat has had a good experience through Kickstart. Brilliant idea, not necessarily best executed through DWP, but our experience of it was quite good. And apprenticeships, I think, could be a real game changer for this industry, because once we do get that awareness, and there is a lot of work to do there, I think apprenticeships could really, really change things from a diversity and from a pipeline, talent pipeline point of view. And again, it is something I know the associations are working through. I know BIMA does. We've been working with our members in terms of how we increase apprenticeships, looking at some of the issues that are out there and connecting with good training providers. So I think apprenticeships is something that we really do need to focus on moving, because the framework, again, is there. It's not perfect, the system isn't perfect, but it's constantly overcomplicated for something that is essentially a job with training. Just have to follow the process through. And I think, associations like BIMA and ourselves are ready to go with that. We just need to get the support of our members to drive it through. So I think apprenticeships is essential. And we've just launched a tool, really, which is more an engagement tool called What Type of Marketer Are You? Which is launching the idea of quizzes, a quiz to young people, launching the idea of what different careers are available, because it is vast. In terms of diversity of opportunity, it is vast, from, very creative graphics type roles right the way through to a data scientist. There is so much to offer here. And, you don't need to study particular topics at that age, particular GCSEs, because there's something in most GCSEs that's going to be applicable.
When we talk about diversity as well, sorry, you go.
I'll just say, I think schools see marketing as a trade rather than a profession, and in certain schools, certainly in my son's case, they're more interested in professions than trades. Hence why, if you want to go into marketing, you need to do a BTEC rather than an A-level.
About you about to say.
My only point was on the diversity. We when we talk about diversity, I think we still always seem to talk about ethnicity and gender, and as opposed to anything else that makes people diverse. In the school that won Digital Day last year is a school that specializes in teaching kids with autism. They just completely nailed the brief. They were amazing. And there are other ways I think that we could clarify diversity and attract people into industry with different job roles. And Kate just mentioned there, what you need to be able to be a data scientist is very different to walking to be a graphic designer, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. I think the skills and the nature of the skills that we need in the industry day are very different to the ones that we needed 10, 15 years ago, and will continue to evolve. But I think what we have pinpointed is there's a real role for all the associations and the organisations that represent the industry, together with the Alliance, Pimento and others who have a vested interest in actually trying to get more talent into the business, get together around the subject, because independently everyone's doing some good stuff. If we can do it collectively, we can then lobby government for support and hopefully try and elevate this as a real issue. In the same way as other organisations have done, whether it's fuel shortages or whether it's pigs this week. I mean, we need to actually find a way to connect. And also, frankly, who better to market the industry to potential future employees than the marketing industry? We should be able to do this with our eyes closed. You know, it just seems like it's a communication issue, first of all. But it's equally, too, we've got to get our house in order, and we've got to make these environments better and more attractive for young people to work in. So there's a job to be done on the product, and there's a job to be done on the proposition, and there's a job to be done on the actual communication. But we've got to find a way to do it collectively, because I think independently we can continue to fail. Graham, one for you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think this conversation and the recent talent shortage has given us a different focus. I mean, we've got a group dedicated to diversity, inclusion and equity. And all their focus has literally been on bringing diverse people into the industry. And it does include, you know, neurodiversity, and includes disability and stuff like that. You know, and the inclusion strategy is also about how do you make things available. Well, that's one of the good news from the current virtual working, is that it has opened up the work for lots of people whose movement has been impaired. So, you know, I think our focus has always been around how do we bring more diverse talent. We've got 50 people mentoring people in the Brixton Finishing School in the hope that they'll come through. And that could also be, you know, social mobility and areas like that. What I don't think we've ever considered is the broader picture of how do we attract more people in total, not just diverse talent. So how do we bring more people generally into the marketing area and into agency life? And I think you're right, Stephen. I think we could do that collectively, and we should be doing that collectively. And maybe it's a role for the Advertising Association itself, who represent all the trade bodies and all the clients and everyone else, to be thinking about the whole talent thing and building the creative industry in Britain, which is, you know, one of their roles alongside the government. And we could support that happily.
Definitely. I'm happy to obviously pick that up with Steve and for us all independently to lobby them to represent us on that basis. Look, we had, I think, some fantastic debate here this morning, and it's been great. It's been a bit of a rant for me because it's something I feel very passionate about. So I apologise if I've gone over the top, but I think this is probably at the heart of the future success of our industry or otherwise. And if we look back, you know, and think about actually even back to the you know, the 80s, 90s, noughties, and so on, this is an industry that led the world. And we need to continue to actually own this and be something that's, you know, obviously positively helping us to export our ideas and our work around the world. So there's a massive job to be done here. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you to all the people who fired questions. We didn't get to everybody. I think we lost out and didn't get a chance to speak to Adam. There's some great observations by Sean and as ever from Jean. Including the role for non-graduates, which I've given them a non-graduate university dropout. So I would totally believe in that. Just wanted to say a couple of house notices. We have returned to a hybrid 6 p.m. club. Our 5 p.m. clubs are going back to their normal slot of 6 p.m. clubs, at least the next one is, which will be hosted next Thursday. We'll allow 30 people in the flesh. You can press the flesh and enjoy a drink at the expense of Pagefield. We've got 6 places left. If you'd like to come along and you haven't already received an invite to that event, it's next Thursday at 6 p.m. at Pagefield. Pagefield is an independent communications consultancy specializing in integrated campaigning, public affairs and corporate communications. They also make a very, very good cocktail. So if you haven't already put your name down for that, please speak to David Morley, who's managing the on-site invitations, and to Isabel, who's managing the Zoom hybrid element, which we'll continue to do alongside the physical meeting. Also, for you golfers, lady golfers, male golfers, we have 25 people so far signed up for the Pimento Golf Day on November the 12th at Swinley Forest. If you haven't had an opportunity to do that invite, invites went out in a circular a couple of weeks ago. I think we've got 3 or 4 places left. If you're a non-golfer and you just like walking around beautiful environments and having fantastic lunches, then you're also very welcome to come, and Isabel's got the detail. And then next week, we have the return of the monthly Pimento New Business Club, which will be hosted as always by Paddy. In the chair next week, we have got Grey Matters, the new business advisory service. Adam Graham will be leading from the front, talking about how to develop and execute both your marketing and your new business strategy. Hopefully we'll pick up some tips and ideas on that to use as an industry to promote more talent. So we are now on the hour, or just about. Thank you very much once again, and look forward to a diverse, interesting, inclusive day and finding opportunities to actually give young people the leg up that they all deserve, and also finding ways to both retain, engage and educate them. So onwards and upwards, as they say. Thank you very much. Cheers.